Hey everyone, I'm Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. I am so incredibly proud to be joined by a number of my residents and advocates who've been fighting for water as a human right. I know for many don't really fully understand or comprehend what it feels like to not have access to water, but not only that, access to clean water in our communities. We in the 13th district have been on the front lines in fighting for access to water. And during this pandemic, it's gotten worse. And of course, we've seen studies now come out that show the correlation and connection of not having access to water and also in contracting COVID. So it's really important for us to move with a sense of urgency. And we're really happy that President Biden is fighting for water infrastructure dollars in communities like ours. I know, though, that it has to be hand in hand with access to affordable water. Mother Cecily, you have been on the front lines in fighting for access to water and making sure that it's affordable and that we are making sure that communities are not cut off from water, especially during this pandemic. But prior to this pandemic, you've been on the front lines in regards to this issue. What do you want President Biden to know in regards to water as a human right?
What we want President Biden to know and to understand as well is that affordability of water is crucial throughout the United States, but we have been struggling here in the city of Detroit, probably on a very high level for the past 10 years. But over the last 5 years, we have experienced, tens of thousands of shutoffs in the city of Detroit because water was not affordable. Initially, we had persons being shut off because, we had water bills being added to tax rolls. We had a steadfast increase in water every year of about almost 10%. And so we left many of our low-income residents, many of our seniors who could not afford water. So probably truly around 2014, 15, we began to provide water to those persons that were being shut off. And we're talking about in a city that is surrounded by water. And we began to provide persons that could not get on an affordable plan, either through the city of Detroit or get assistance to commonly known Wayne Metro water. And that was, really heartbreaking to be in a city that we know has access to water, that owns the water system, to have to provide directly to our residents water because they didn't have running water coming into their homes. And so, we were concerned about the lead issues. DPS just up until recently could not have water inside the schools because of the lead issue. We had an increase in hepatitis A in those areas where we had tremendous shutoffs. So we've been fighting to let the world know that the affordability of water is in the forefront of everything, because water is life-sustaining, and without water as a human right, many people in the city and the state and throughout the country are going to be suffering in the very near future.
I don't know if you know, I got involved with the water crisis and movement towards access to affordable and clean water through Mother Lila Cabell, who really taught me the importance of humanizing the impact of what it means to live without water. And it was the story I read of an elderly couple in Detroit who were melting their snow in a bucket just to be able to flush their toilet. So Mother Cecily, one of the important things about the American Rescue Plan is it did have money for water shutoffs. But I've been trying to educate my colleagues, including the Biden administration, about the importance of having a permanent fund that helps ensure that we help those that are facing water shutoffs. And that's why Emergency Water as a Human Right Act is so important. It's $1.5 billion, even though I know there was $500 million in the American Rescue Plan. Can you talk about the human impact of not having access to water?
It has been, water affordability has been a problem in the city of Detroit and in Flint and throughout the United States, I would think, for some time now. And because just focusing in on Detroit, it has been a problem. We have so many people that have extremely high arrearage. And that means that we have persons, including Ms. Taylor, that have bills that are thousands of dollars. It was wonderful to have the COVID plan that the city of Detroit did in collaboration with the state, where we had persons cut on and had to pay a $25 a month, but it does not remedy the enormous past bills. And so even if we move forward, we're going to have persons that are going to run into the issue of not being able to afford water because they have these high arrearage. So we need to have a portion of those resources allocated to forgiveness, wiping out those high arrearage to put people on a fair footage. And then we need to have affordability in the city of Detroit, I mean, really throughout the United States, and we need policies on that because, with water being life-sustaining and we view it as a human right, low-income persons should not have to suffer, sanitary conditions or sanitary conditions because they don't have, sufficient water. And so therefore we support the EPA's position that water should not be more than approximately 3% of your income. And so the city of Detroit, we just endorsed and submitted a plan to be incorporated in our charter to have affordable water for the city of Detroit. We would like that program adopted for the state of Michigan and throughout the country. But as you indicated, Congresswoman, we have a very old infrastructure that needs to be repaired. Many of the homes are older, built prior to the 1970s. And so we need lead pipes replaced. We need homes need to be repiped totally, which is a major cost with the water bills in terms of leakage in the various homes throughout the city. So yes, we like to see this as a long-term program, a program that is incorporated to the Health and Human Services protocols.
And Mother Cecily, we all know this was a crisis before the pandemic and before COVID, and so we want to see something that's long-term sustainable and really gets to the root causes of why people are facing water shutoffs in our country.
Yes.
Ms. Taylor, I know this is very personal for you. And again, if it wasn't for advocates like Mama Lila Cabell and so many others, really across the state of Michigan, I've been talking to folks in Flint, families in Pontiac, and other places across the state of Michigan that I know have seen this water shutoff and the crisis really exacerbate during COVID, especially because of the economic impacts. But, many of our families are struggling right now with illnesses, with, childcare, so many other layers. But for you, Ms. Taylor, I mean, why should, President Biden move with a sense of urgency?
Well, Congresswoman Tlaib, I feel he should move with the urgency due to the fact I am a senior citizen. I am disabled. But I don't feel that because of these things, you should be punished to be able to wash your body, to be able to drink water if you have children, for them to have decent water to drink. We're in Michigan. We're surrounded by water. We allocate water to other states, other cities. So I feel it should be a human right, whereas it's affordable. Seeing if you're a senior citizen and you're on disability, you're only going to get X amount of dollars a month, not a week, a month. I worked hard. I'm retired. Unfortunately, I am disabled. In fact, I could tell you a story of the fact I had a hip replacement January 6, 2016. I was in the hospital in rehabilitation for a month and a half. Before I went into the hospital, now I'm talking about like October, November of 2015, EcoWorks, which I guess they're a subsidiary of the Detroit Water and Sewage Department, came out and did an inspection. They stated I had no leakage. They gave me They did all the energy checks in my house. They gave me a new shower head, a digital thermometer for my furnace, and they just checked, make sure there was no leakage. I didn't have that done once. They did it twice before I went into the hospital. On my return from the hospital, I had to learn to walk again. So it was very difficult. I had to wash my body. Okay, very difficult. I received a bill in the month of March 2016. And mind you, I hadn't been home for a month and a half. I live alone.
Yeah.
And in the interim of everything, I get a bill over $1,500 for 1 month.
That's unbelievable.
I went to the water board. I talked to some executives and stuff. They say, well, you must have a leak. I said, I do not have a leak. In fact, I got a brand new toilet.
You know, the interesting thing, even if you had a leak, you know, the kids say you have a leak. Well, there should be services to help people, even if they did, or address it. It's like they're punishing you, you know, for many of my residents, by the way, Ms. Taylor, they do have sometimes leakage and stuff, but they don't have the resources to repair it. And I want this water fund to be able to provide for those infrastructure dollars that go directly to the residents. They keep saying they're going to do all this stuff with the pipes. I'm sorry to interrupt. They, you know, yeah, we need infrastructure dollars to get clean water into our schools because all the water fountains are shut down. We need all of that. But Ms. Taylor, that's not going to result in actually getting to the people's homes, inside their homes, what's connected to their homes. That's what I also want to make sure President Biden includes when he talks about water infrastructure. But it's unbelievable for 1 month of $1,500.
Absolutely. I was in awe. At that point in time, I was getting a little over $700 and something a month.
Yeah.
When I went to them with documentation and stated, you're wrong, they told me I had used enough water to fill an Olympic-sized pool. How could I do that?
Yeah. Where did you turn
I'm
to?
not home. Yeah. How could I do that? And then I'm not the only one. I'm just one of many who 1 month you have a bill and maybe it's $60 or $70. And then the next month you got a bill that's $1,500, $2,000. I fought them tooth and nail about this. I said, no. Well, someone had to come to y'all. No. There was no one here. In turn, I got with Mother Celeste. They brought me water out because I told them, if you cannot correct this, you can shut my water off. I will see about getting bottled water or something for me to drink. I had to take medication. I'm not taking medication, buying pop and juice and all of that. I have to wash my body. I can't wash my body with milk, even though it's nice in water, but it's got to be in water.
Yeah.
People are struggling, especially when you retire or you're on disability and you get one check a month. And here you get a bill that's higher than you put two checks together. So that means gas and light doesn't get paid. You can't keep your phone on. If you got insurance, you can't pay your insurance. And this is ridiculous. I feel it is a duty for them to realize people are hurting. Not just me. There are those who are worse than I am. There are families that have babies that need water. We need water. It's a human right. And this is why I felt that this should be addressed where they can get us affordable water according to your income.
Yeah.
And not give you a bill that's higher than your whole check for a month. How are you going to survive?
Yeah,
you have to buy food.
Absolutely. And Ms. Taylor, you know, what's unbelievable is I saw it's water has become so expensive. I think it's increased over 400% in costs, and wages aren't going up. Your disability, you know, income or your retirement, it's not going up. And so the cost of water is going up while, you know, our living and what we are being provided for is not matching the fact that it's going up. It is, you know, one of the things that I spoke to the Biden administration about is creating a program where in situations like this, I mean, it really needs to come down to getting to root causes of affordability, like you said, based on income. But also, if there are children in the home, if somebody's disabled, has medical conditions, everyone shouldn't be treated as equal, especially when it comes to water. Water is life. And you're coming out of the hospital and rehabilitation and therapy to, you know, a bill that is basically, you can't afford it. It's going to lead you, well, if you can't afford it, then you can't access it, shut it down. And so I really appreciate, you know, you sharing your personal story. But Ms. Taylor, I was talking to a woman in Tennessee. I was talking to some of my colleagues from areas in California, the indigenous people in some of these tribes. They've been facing these water unaffordability, and also the fact that sometimes the water isn't even clean. If you know, President Biden was before you right now, what is one thing that you want him to understand what it means to not have access to water?
The one thing I feel he should understand is that every man doesn't make $1,000 a month. Yeah. Those who have worked and now retired or disabled or whatever the situation, low income, programs should be set aside to help these people, because they are the ones that keep you in office. When you move forward with this, as I say, sometimes you get brownie points. It's not about brownie points or the, I can say, popularity. It's about life. It's about people being able to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. Be it they have a worker helping them or what, be able to take care of that baby, because that's the future. I'm a senior citizen now. I was a baby before, but we had water. We need the water to quench our thirst, wash our bodies, cook, wash our clothes, wash our dishes, so we won't get another infection. We have this pandemic going on. You want another pandemic to come in? Is this what the whole world is going to be about? Because you decided, or not you, but others, whoever in dealing with this situation, Detroit Water Board, decide that, oh, we're going to pad it. Okay, we're going to throw X amount of dollars on that person and X amount of dollars on the fact, oh, they low income. We're going to throw that to them, and they're going to have to scratch for it or their water is off. Then what you do, you're going to have people on food lines, people trying to find places to take a shower or a bath or just to get a drink of water.
You know, the hardest part of it all, and I know a lot of the water warriors, the public health folks, the environmental justice groups, they're so frustrated because companies like Nestle can draw water, our water, public water, for as little as $300 application fee. And I know it's unbelievable. And Coca-Cola, and I mean, the amount of water they can access for profit for their companies for little. And then we're paying, you know, again, 400% increase in rates. And we're paying so much more than multi-billion-dollar corporations who are bottling our water and selling it for profit. So I really appreciate you speaking the truth. I think you said it right. I mean, the one thing that I think people need to understand is that water is access to like your whole life. from not only bathing yourself and drinking it, but your cooking, everything is so connected. Nourishment of your children, everything is connected to water. And so I really thank you, Ms. Taylor, for continuing to speak up. You know, so many of our neighbors across the 13th Congressional District, they face water shutoffs. Some of them are so incredibly, you know, ashamed that they can't afford water. And I said, no, did you know an increase in cost? And I was like, this is not your fault. The rates have continued to increase. Every rate before, I think up until recently, they continue to increase our rates. In this family in Richford Township, you know, they didn't know. They didn't know their you know, property owner was not paying the water, and they ended up, I mean, it was just, it's, people don't understand how complex this issue is. And the fact that we just don't have the kind of sustainable like programs out there to help people with everything, reconnection, plumbing services, affordability plans, you know, for specific folks that are in situations like you, Ms. Taylor. So again, I can't thank you enough for speaking the truth and speaking up about your own experiences.
Well, I thank you for inviting me in.
Thank you.
I thank you for that. I really do.
Mother Cicely, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap?
Well, I just wanted to state that Ms. Taylor had been instrumental. She was one of the plaintiffs on the lawsuit to maintain a moratorium on the water from being shut off. And so we really appreciate her in that. You know, we looked at very clearly her circumstance in terms of the billing, but this has been an ongoing affordability problem. And we really want to focus and highlight to make sure that's understood. Because there are programs within the city now that they're trying to look at. If you do have a problem with leakage, they'll wipe off part of your bill. But we need to look at, like I said, the arrearage, because if we can focus on that arrearage, we can make sure that many of the people that suffered from lack of affordability will be able to afford water once they have a water affordability program.
It has to be affordability in these plans, but also I want the money, the Water is Human Right Act, 1.5 billion, but also the $1 billion that already been allocated that's supposed to come out hopefully by the summer through Health and Human Services. Is I want that money to also be used for reconnection fees, because that's not included sometimes when you get some of the funding or support. You know, what I call the Band-Aid approach. It seems like of okay, we'll pay the rearage of this neighbor who has a back bill. That does not require the water authority, the water departments to actually turn your water on. And that is the disconnect that I think I continue to try to teach my colleagues and the Biden administration in that if these municipalities, if the state and others are applying for this Water is Human Right Act, you know, funding, or the funding that we have in the American Rescue Plan for water shutoffs, when they apply, they should be required that it has to also include reconnection, because they're going to pay these rearage and then they're not going to come out and reconnect. But I also said, what I hear from many of our social workers and organizations on the ground helping with these back bills is really critically important, is allowing some of that money not only to pay the back bill, but also to pay for plumbing services if there are structural issues within the home. And so I don't want, you know, I really, they need to understand that it cannot be so simple that you're just, oh, here's some money. No, Ms. Taylor may need a actual affordability plan. Maybe there's other issues that are happening that she needs. You know, also reconnection fees is like $80 or something I heard. But the point is, it is really important and critical that it can't be, you know, the American Rescue Plan has the money in there, but the money cannot be distributed in a way where it just gives it to the water departments and water authority, and it doesn't actually lead to people getting their water turned back on, nor does it allow them to be used for issues that they might be having. And I'll tell you, when people have their water off for almost a year, and we have real cases like that, you can't just turn that water back on without treating those pipes. You can't just expect that water to be okay and not full of lead and contamination. So again, I really appreciate both of you for helping me, because this is the moment where folks are going to listen to the president, but also I want the president to understand American Rescue Plan was critically important. That's why I supported it. But we need really structural change in how we treat water in our country. It cannot just be
Yes.
treated as the same as if you know, somebody's trying to get insurance or anything. No, this is so connected to life. And
Yeah.
you know, having one of our neighbors, Miss Taylor, I mean, she's coming out of the hospital. She worked hard. She gets limited income every month. And she has to pay the same amount of water as someone that has a family of 4 and has all this. It doesn't make any sense that she's being charged the way she has in the rate. So I can't thank you both enough. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Monica, for really being a champion and bringing this water crisis in our country on a national level and really putting a human face with the stories and the advocates and the water warriors here in the 13th district who have been able to tell the important stories that existed prior to COVID, but it's just gotten worse during COVID. I know the American Rescue Plan was critically needed, but the water shutoff dollars in there, that's been gonna help folks, but that is for the whole country. When we see 15 million Americans that we know either are faced with water shutoff now or going to face water shutoff soon. Can you talk about why we need to move quicker with a sense of urgency with a permanent fix? Why water right now is so unaffordable and why it also has to be clean? I think people don't understand it's not just access to affordable water, but it's also making sure that that water is something we can consume without hurting our public health.
Well, first of all, Congresswoman, let me just thank you for your leadership, keeping water on the forefront of the minds and hearts of Congress. I don't believe that we would have even gotten the relief if you had been such a stellar champion. But what we know that the $500 million, it truly is a Band-Aid in the middle of what we know is a global pandemic. When you look at the fact that 15 million Americans are struggling to flush their toilets and wash their hands, when you look at just in the city of Detroit, our own city, that it takes about $1 million to help 1,000 families because of the legacy debt. Detroit is bearing the burden of a region. When you look at the fact that 40% of the population of the entire state of Michigan is getting its water from a dated infrastructure system that is still being funded by the residents of Detroit. And it's not being done in a fair and equitable way. And so we're deeply concerned as these dollars are rolling out from the federal government into our states, that we must have guidelines and guardrails that ensure that those dollars are providing not only the relief that communities and families need to keep water clean, safe, affordable, and accessible, but we're deeply concerned about the legacy debt that is going to be left as a water burden for these particular families. And the other thing that we know through the work that we've done at We the People of Detroit is that there is a definite tie bar to the increase and the uptick of the spread of this disease when you cannot wash your hands and be assured that you can afford to flush your toilet.
Yeah, Food Water Watch did a study with Cornell University that showed about, you know, thousands of Michigan residents who could have their contraction of COVID was connected to the fact that they lacked access to water. And, you know, this was early on when there wasn't a moratorium. We saw obviously people trying to address the crisis that again existed prior to the pandemic. You know, it has been really hard to paint this like human impact picture of the human impact to many of my colleagues who truly don't understand what it means to live without water, but also understanding that the trinkets of money that has been sent to various states are just far too little. Not only that, they're temporary. It doesn't get to the root causes of why we have water shutoffs. And you talked about the legacy costs, you talk about the need for infrastructure. But I also continue to say to folks, but we also need a permanent fund for many of the residents who, you know, want water as a human right fund to exist. That is there, similar to how we treat gas and light across the country with the LAHI program. Why don't we have a permanent program like that for water that is in line with obviously the infrastructure investments that are needed to get it to a point where it's clean and affordable, hopefully. Why is it critical that we have that? And why does it also have to be flexible? You know, I hear folks say, you can pay the rearage, but it doesn't actually require a lot of these water departments to actually turn people's water on. And it also needs to be used for plumbing services and needs, because many of these homes, many of our, especially my seniors, they can't afford to address some of the other issues that are related to getting access to water. And again, it's the plumbing issues, the services, the lines into their homes. That is thousands of dollars that they just don't have right now. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things I'd like to lift up, Congresswoman, is a story of a woman here in the city of Detroit, where Cecily McClellan, who's the director of Waterworks for We the People of Detroit, has been working with her for 5 years. And the dilemma that we were able to raise to the forefront is that she could not get her water restored because she had fecal matter sitting in her basement. But she couldn't clear the fecal matter out of her basement until she got her water restored. And so we have been going back and forth with our water utility for about 3.5, almost 4 years to try to resolve this issue for this mother who is not only residing in the home, but she has 2 children that have respiratory issues. They're in need of water to address those issues. And so we just continue to fight for those families that we know have continued to be in the crosshairs of utilities as it relates to finding an equitable and fair way to restore their water. When you look at what's happening across the nation and even our region, in Chicago, water rates have tripled in the last 8 years. When you look at Toledo, who's only 45 minutes south of Detroit, water rates have doubled in the last 1.5 years. When you look at Flint, our beloved Flint, what you find is that even in the middle of a pandemic, even with all the infusion of dollars that have gone into the infrastructure and the lead pipe removal, there still is low trust in terms of the water quality that's coming out of their pipes. And prior to the pandemic, they were paying some of the highest water rates in the country, on average about $250 a month. And they are waiting to see that their water rates are going to double. So the families that are under the most severe attack, that are struggling the most, are now looking into the abyss that they may be now taking on even more debt. So if we're talking about an equitable and just framework, then we definitely appreciate the emergency relief that is coming out of the LIWAP program. But we're very concerned about the fact that that program is struggling even to meet the needs of those that need energy relief. So now to compile that with now water relief, we don't believe that that's going to give us the sustained water relief that the community needs. And so it is our hope that the EPA would become the housing of that long-term sustained water relief program. And it must be tie-barred to jobs, contracts, and training. We cannot infuse all of this amount of money without making sure that the communities that have actually been impacted the most with water disparity and water inequities also must have a pathway to job creation and other opportunities that actually could be this high tide that could lift all boats. And so we're advocating that it's not an either or. It's not just an investment in our water infrastructure with pipes and cement, but it's investment in the water infrastructure of the human capital of this nation, because we can't continue to tout ourselves as the leaders of the free world, and then we can't ensure the American public that they have access to clean, safe, and affordable water. And one of the things my mother, who's a retired Master Sergeant from the U.S. Army, told me in 2014 is that according to the Geneva Convention, you cannot shut off water access to your enemy in times of war. But right now we're finding ourselves in the American public at war with our government in terms of the lack of investment in terms of our infrastructure.
So in the American Rescue Plan is $500 million. Obviously, the Water is a Human Right Fund, we're asking for $1.5 billion, which was already a compromise, as you know. It should be at $4 billion. To get to the extent of the crisis, the water crisis in our country. On top of that, the money that has already been allocated, $500 million, has still not been distributed. That we are still waiting for those dollars to be distributed. In the meantime, advocates like yourself and others are saying, we need a moratorium in the meantime. I know you personally have worked with the advocates here and said, we're not gonna wait. And you've got 68,000 bottles of water you're distributing already to people to be prepared, because we are worried that people's water will be turned off. I had the city of Ecorse, Monica, that close to 50% of the residents there have not been able to pay their water bills. So if President Biden was here and you wanted to share with him the importance of going beyond the 500 million that is in the American Rescue Plan, you know, in the need for a moratorium. How do we convince him, and how do we convince folks to understand this is great? So it's important that there's money in there for water shutoffs, but why is it not going to get to the root causes of the water crisis in our country?
Well, I would definitely share with the president, in order to build back better, we've got to ensure that the American people, especially working families and low-income families, actually just have their basic needs met. That we cannot be the leaders of the free world and not have this assurance for the American public. If we're talking about getting people back to school and back to work and businesses back open, then water is the best PPE. Before your mask and before you social distance, being able to wash your hands and properly prepare your body to embrace the day, the ability to make a bottle for your baby with clean water that's not toxic or unaffordable, the opportunity to be able to assure that as my children are going into a school where others may be exposed to the pandemic, that they have at least been able to shower properly and wash their clothes. And so this is something that I don't just hope for my children and my grandchildren, but it is something that I've learned from water warriors here in the city of Detroit, like Charity Hicks and the late great Lila Cabell, is that it's about the human right to water. And what we know is that that right is tie-barred to an equitable and just right to water. And what we know is that this great president, if he will tie-bar that right to an economic upshift that includes jobs, contracts, and training, that I believe that high tide will not only improve the quality of life of low-income folks, but I will believe that water will tie us at a greater level to improve all of the other issues that we must face over the days and months to come. And I tell them, like Coleman Young told us, if you find a good fight, get in it. And the human right to water is a fight worth getting in.
Absolutely. No, and again, I want them to be much more, you know, like extraordinary in how they think about it, not this approach of, but we got you 638 million last time, Rashida, we got you 500. It's unbelievable. And then that's the other connection of not understanding that it just pays, it doesn't actually reach the residents because they're not getting their stuff reconnected, and then they end up with the bill again because it's unaffordable.
Well,
so
the legacy debt is also going to be a burden, because what it's going to do is going to be weaponized against homeowners. And what we're seeing across the country is liens are being placed on homeowners. And so it's a way to weaponize water to actually gentrify particular communities and change the political dynamics of communities that would be more progressively leaning. And so we've got to be cautious of that as well. It's not just one thing, as Reverend Pinckney says, it's everything. And these things are all tie-barred.
Yeah, and you know, Monica, one of the things I've been saying in House Oversight Committee just around this issue and holding, you know, corporations accountable is, you know, Nestle and Coca-Cola. I mean, the fact that they can access unlimited amount of water for just $300 for profit, while, you know, Miss Taylor in my district is struggling to pay her water bill, which is thousands and thousands of dollars. Again, a billionaire can have, $1 billion corporation can have access to water, while my resident is struggling to pay just to wash her dishes and wash her body and cook, you know, her food and water. So I thank you so much for your incredible leadership. Thank you for doing this, and you know, hopefully we'll be able to get the administration to understand that connectivity that you just talked about.